kind of threw this together, but wanted to kind of check the temperature of the channel.
Yeah.
Heading into the Super Bowl, as well as some questions you guys have. And I think Jen and I are going to fight tonight.
I do too. Got him.
This is the Buffalo Plus Podcast, brought to you by Connors and Ferris.
All right, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel, presented by Connors and Ferris. Mike Catalana is not with us. He has a veteran day off. Dan Fates made him seem like he was dead.
Well, you said Mike Catalana. I was like, I am not. He's not with us. It's off to a good start.
Mike
we're going with this.
He's just on vacation. It's fine.
Yep.
Dan, I'm Jenna. Let's land the plane.
There we go.
All right. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel if you love our antics. So Dan did a mailbag, and we got some really good questions. I want to thank everyone who submitted a question. We truly appreciate the feedback that we get on this channel, because it really does make the channel so much fun. So we're going to do our mailbag, and we're kind of going to lump some of the questions in together, just because there were some similar themes throughout some of these questions. So understandably, a lot to talk about in the off season, but I think this is a good starting place for a lot of people.
Yeah, over 50 comments in some angry comments.
Yeah, that's fair.
Some, which is fair.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're heading into Super Bowl week. When Mike comes back, we're hoping to do another pod kind of previewing the Super Bowl from our perspective. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on in the channel. Again, closing in on 30,000 subscribers, but we, again, wanted to hear from you. We want this channel to be as interactive as possible, and I think a lot of people appreciated when we did our hot ones. We had over 150 questions. And again, we just kind of threw this together, but wanted to kind of check the temperature of the channel.
Yeah.
Heading into the Super Bowl, as well as some questions you guys have. And I think Jen and I are going to fight tonight.
I do too. All right, let's start. What a tease. Okay, so 3 questions that kind of all have similar themes that we wanted to start with. So these are from Freshly Fried, Mr. Hubinson 88, and Solomon Fowler 327. Freshly Fried says, is there any chance for Bean to work out a way to offload the seemingly inevitable issues that they are about to face if they continue to retain Diggs? I love what he did for us, but it's what are you going to do for me next issue? And I have lost faith in Diggs about the team. I wonder how many offensive issues have stemmed from trying to accommodate his requests. Just my opinion. Any thoughts? Okay, that's part 1.
Yeah.
Part 2 is from Mr. Hubinson 88. Hi guys, thank you for all you do keeping Bills Mafia informed. Thank you. My question is, what is the best way to drown out all of the Diggs drama? I believe Diggs intentionally keeps comments vague because he craves the attention that it brings, especially from the national media. Okay. And then Solomon Fowler 327. You guys are awesome. Thank you for taking our questions. Thank you. My question is of Stephon Diggs, and exactly what does he want? So my question is that if Diggs actually wanted to be a Buffalo Bill and play with Josh Allen, why would he not just come out and say, yes, I do want to be here, instead of his cryptic tweets and comments that paints a different picture? So a lot to discuss in there, obviously stemming from Stephon Diggs and how some of the fan base feels about his comments about where he wants to be next season, his relationship with Josh. Where do you want to start?
Do you just want to start yelling at each other? Because we've talked about this
a lot
topic, especially this past weekend, because at the Pro Bowl, Steph was asked by Cameron Wolfe of the NFL Network, pretty much wrapping up the season. Again, this is another instance where the Bills season comes to an end and we don't hear from Steph. This is the second year in a row. It may be the third year. I can't remember back. Again, that's who Steph is. He doesn't talk a ton, but I've said it before. When he talks, I listen, because I think he is one of the more, it's crazy to say he's one of the more mature players, Jenna, but I feel like when he picks his words, he doesn't just go up to the podium and say what everybody wants to hear.
I think Diggs is a captain of the team, so people expect him to talk, but I think he is very good. He's a really smart guy. He is one of those guys that when he talked in training camp, because there were so many questions leading this past offseason about Diggs, does he want to be in Buffalo, all this stuff. He did a really great job of saying, Josh is my guy. I'm here this team. I want to retire a Buffalo Bill. So I think when you talk about, you like hearing him talk, I get it, because he's someone that A, has the experience of being in the league for a long time, and B, the perspective of being on this team and kind of seeing the ebbs and flows that have gone into being with Buffalo, how close they are, and yet how they still have more distance to go.
That's fair. And I think what upset me about the interview that Cameron Wolf did with him is a little bit of what upset me earlier this year, where it's a national media guy dropping in. And this isn't a shot at Cam Wolf. Like, he's doing his job. He's got to cover the entire NFL. We're just covering the Bills. And as we have said on this channel several times, the fact of going to practice, being on the sidelines, seeing the day-to-day operations of this team, how it handles itself. Stefon Diggs has been nothing but a true professional and pro. Yes, he flipped out on Josh in the Cincinnati Bengals playoff loss. Okay. And we talked here last year, and I said, because Steph didn't talk, and I said, Jenna, he's got to talk. I was like, and like we were like, hey man, there's something here, because when you don't talk, people put words in your mouth and people assume something is up.
Yeah.
He then talked at training camp.
Yeah.
First day, addressed it head on. Nailed it. It was one of the most refreshing press conferences that I had heard in quite some time from a truly genuine person. Said, yeah, this is what it is. And again, explained, hey, it's like family matters and things like that. And yeah, families fight, but we're still in this all together. I thought he did a phenomenal job. And I thought he put a lot of questions to bed. When Stefon Diggs signed his extension, however long ago it was, he's like, I want to retire a Buffalo Bill.
Yeah.
And then at training camp, he was asked about it again. He's like, yeah. And they were like, oh, excuse me, can you clarify that? And he's like, I want to retire a Buffalo Bill.
Yes.
So then this goes on. And then about November 16th, I went back and looked at some of the tweets. It got brought up again about, Steph, are you happy here and all of these things? And Steph kind of fought back during the season and said, what have I done to not make it seem like I don't want to be here? And that is where I don't side with Steph, because I understand like what they're saying, his cryptic tweets and things like that. I get it. But Steph hasn't done anything to make you think that he's unhappy or that he doesn't want to be in Buffalo.
I think the reason that I've said this to you, like, we have a job to report on this team either way, depending on whatever happens. And I believe the reason this situation kind of came up is because, we cover the team every day, and we've talked about how, and Dan mentioned it, Diggs wants to be in Buffalo, the leader that he is, all these things. Cameron Wolf dropping in, I would assume, Dan, there was a producer in his ear saying, these are the topics you're going to ask about. You're going to ask about, his declining numbers at the end of the season. You're going to ask about how he is with Josh and his future in Buffalo, because as your zooming out perspective, those are the things that the casual fan wants to know about Diggs, because those were the storylines that we followed this season.
100%.
So I get why some fans feel like, though, why didn't Diggs just say, Josh is my guy, I want to be with the Bills. I made, I wanted to make some plays, and everyone did. And I understand why fans feel like that, because full disclosure, I do not care I don't care. I just feel like for Diggs, there was the opportunity to put that to bed, because as we all know, it's the off season. What do people love to do? They love to talk NFL Network, ESPN, you got, CBS Sports, the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. We're going to talk about, is Diggs, does he want to be here? All these things. And I say that we keep talking about it because, Dan, if Diggs were to say in that interview, Josh is my guy, all those things, we would not be having this discussion, in my opinion.
I guess what gets frustrating to me is that he's said that.
I agree.
How many times
but
does
we hadn't
he have
heard
to
from,
say it?
But again,
how many times?
This is Cameron Wolf dropping in. This is someone that is not around all the time. So it's not surprising. I don't think you would have gotten that from a local reporter. I think you're getting that from someone who is following the national storylines. So it was kind of the perfect storm, because it's someone following the kind of, again, from 1,000 feet perspective of this team. And one of the question marks would be, is Diggs, what's his relationship like moving forward?
So I think it's, it's funny. You've talked about it, because when we first started talking about this issue, I was like, it's unfair to Diggs. I was like saying it's unfair. And you fought back and kind of were correct. I back away from saying it's unfair. Steph's putting himself in these shoes by what he is saying or what he isn't saying. I'm on the side of Steph has said all that he has needed to say already, and pretty recently. So I look back at the November 19th. I feel like I've had to say the same thing twice to multiple people. I feel like the less I say, the more they pry. And when I address the situation, it's not enough. I sat down with everyone here in training camp and I felt like I nipped it in the bud as to how I feel about how I felt, but here we are again. So that was in training camp in August. And then we nitpick again in November. And now all of a sudden it's January or February. And we're like, so does Steph still want to be here? And again, it's the insecure partner when you're in a relationship and your partner says, do you love me? And they say, yeah, I love you, babe. Or I love you. Yeah, absolutely, sweetie. And then 3 minutes goes by and they say, do you still love me? It's like, dude, what else do I got to do? That's where
3 minutes and 3 months though are different. I think it's important to remember the context that this is not back to back to back to back. After Diggs talked to training camp, we did a podcast about it's a non-story. There is no
So how
ill
are we
will.
here again?
Because that's how things work. The season unfolded and some of the things down the line in terms of, look, we have talked about Diggs didn't have the same numbers at the end of the season, but he did have huge, crucial plays for this team that is undisputed, especially on big third downs, big fourth downs as well. But again, you get a national reporter who's coming in and doing the overarching themes of an NFL team. So I think when I say I think Dig kind of revels in, he knows his truth. His circle knows his truth, but I think he is
Josh
tired.
Allen knows the truth.
I think he is tired of having to answer these questions, which a part of me understands. And then a part of me says, unfortunately, that is how things work. And I think of if Josh Allen were to answer a question the way that Diggs did, I think we would be talking about it in the same way. But we aren't, because Josh, when has been asked about Diggs, he always says, he is my guy. I guess when you say like, I feel it's unfair, all these things, I'm not saying it's fair because I don't believe it is, but I think Diggs is a veteran. He is a captain. He has been in this league for a long time. I think he's done playing the game, which I respect a little bit, but I think when you want to handle things in this way, which is his own prerogative, there is going to be the off-season narratives and storylines that come along with it.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I think he does kind of revel in, which is his own thing, and that's fine.
It's the only thing that bothers me is I feel like we ask Steph, us, the world, the Bills fans, the national media expects Steph or asks Steph questions that aren't asked of other players. And again, you talk about we don't ask a bunch of we don't ask any other player. Are you invested? Do you want to be here in Buffalo? Every 2 months. We asked it of Steph, and I think that's unfair to Steph.
I don't think that's 100%. Just because one reporter has that question doesn't mean that's constantly what's being asked. And you even made it kind of a joke this season on Twitter of like, Stephon Diggs doesn't want. You did.
100%.
You were playing into that narrative of like,
100%.
Look at how ridiculous this is. So I don't.
Because that was when Stephen A came out and said he didn't want to be there.
Exactly.
And that was after he had squashed the whole thing in training camp. It was like, again, people parachuting in. But what happens is that somebody from the national media comes in, stirs the pot a little bit, accidentally. Again, Cameron Wolfe did nothing wrong, except for the fact where he said his targets were down. His targets were actually up. He's had 160 plus targets in nearly every single year he's been in Buffalo. So again, the one thing I also know about Steph is that the dude wants the football, and good luck going to another team that's going to give you the football 160 plus times. So hang on there. And again, for like what we said, Steph, his numbers may not have been what we thought it was, especially at the end of the year, not where he wanted them to be. Still finished with over 100 catches, over 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
Like, still is a true number one wide receiver. Now, the NFL, somebody makes the question, is a good point. It's, what are you going to do for me next? I think that was freshly fried, like talking about it. Yes, that's another issue that we can talk about entirely. But my thing is that Steph has never done anything publicly for us to believe that he is unhappy. That's why I made all those jokes about saying, look at how unhappy Stephon Diggs is. Look at how unhappy he is. Because unless something is going on totally behind the scenes, which, hey, full disclosure, we don't know. Mm-hmm. Unless you're in his inner circle. But when he was asked, I guess I go back to the comparison of when his brother Travion was like, we got to get him out of Buffalo. And everybody's like, oh, Steph's out of here. He wants to go to Dallas, all these things. And we asked Steph about it. And Steph's like, why do I have to answer for what my brother tweets? Agreed. His brother's an NFL player and isn't Patrick Mahomes' brother. But there is a sense of, why does Diggs get like this shadow cast on him of something that he isn't, in my opinion. I don't think he's done anything to deserve this. I don't want to be in Buffalo talk. And it's annoying to him, I think. And it's annoying to me and to fans. I'm saying, like, I don't think he's going anywhere.
Well, I think he's not going anywhere because of his contract, because of the financial investment it is, because of the dead cap hit to move him. My question to you is, if Diggs was a free agent this season, do you think he would be back in Buffalo next year?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know on what number. Again, contracts are contracts, and that's why when Steph's like, hey, I take it one day at a time. Like, I get it.
Yeah,
Like there is
it
money.
is a business.
There is money that needs to be figured out. There is money that either needs to be moved around. Steph's salary's got to be adjusted, whether that's a bonus, like whether they just cut the check to try and get the salary down. That's a whole nother thing. I've joked at length as well about the salary cap and just cutting checks to get cap down. All those things. But again, we have argued about this topic, and I'm sure some people are nauseated. And I also feel like people are very divided.
Yeah.
I feel like there is no middle ground. I feel like it is stop talking about Steph. You guys don't know what you're talking about, or it's get Steph out of here. He's such a distraction. And in my head, it's like, what has he done to distract anybody?
I think I can see both sides.
Of course you can.
Well, yeah, because I understand when people are like, Diggs obviously wants to be in Buffalo. I can see when people say that 1,000%. And then I can see also other people saying, but he wasn't clear enough. And he's had multiple opportunities to clarify. And when he did clarify in training camp, it put that narrative to bed. So I do get both sides. I don't know how I feel. I don't know if Diggs would be back if he was a free agent this season. I don't know. I last year would say absolutely. I don't know if he would want to be back. But maybe that's because I'm reading too much into what he said. But at the end of the day, I think that Diggs obviously has what he believes. I think he does enjoy playing the crypticness.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's also
stop reading into my Twitter.
That's also a byproduct of what he does to influence people feeling like, does he really want to be here? Why would you say that if you don't really want to be here? So I understand how some people might be like, wait, what?
Yeah.
If he doesn't want to be in Buffalo, why did, like, what's going on here?
That's fair. Again,
I just think by being really cryptic, you obviously are, you're intentionally putting out a message of being wishy-washy, kind of vague. So I get why some people are like, wait, what does this mean? I feel like I love covering Diggs. I mean, the playmaking potential that he has, some of the plays he's had in Buffalo, obviously a really smart guy, captain of the team. He's smart. So I think that's why I don't particularly feel like, wow, I can't believe we're rehashing this again, because sometimes I think he brings it on himself. And I think he is fine with that as well. He's obviously a very confident man, and he knows how he plays. He knows what he believes, all these things. So that's why I don't feel like, I can't believe this is unfair. I'm like, well, this is how things work. That's just how it is.
Yeah. And again, I just take Steph for his words. So again, he doesn't talk all the time. And you're right. Maybe part of that is another thing of, we hear Josh twice a week, maybe more. We hear Josh on podcasts. We hear Josh on everything. We don't hear Steph a lot. But that goes to show when he talks, he's thought about it. He's thought about what he wants to say. And that's maybe to both of our points. Maybe that's both of your points of, hey, I'm going to be cryptic to and again, he ended the Cameron Wolf bite when he was asked about Josh Allen. And he's like, I know my piece. The people that need to know. For everybody else, you can talk about it. Have fun this offseason. Like, he does like.
That's what I'm saying. That's why when you're like, that's unfair. I'm like, I mean.
That's what I'm saying. I did back away.
Yeah.
From when we first started talking. I go, it's not that unfair. He does like lighting the match and kind of walking away and being like, that was fun. Like, but I think that there's no question for when he talks, I listen. And the other one that really stood out to me was he said, I've never really said anything about being unhappy. So you've drawn conclusions of things I've never said. That's what kind of troubles me, because it kind of throws a wrench in it and it creates chaos where I haven't created it. That was another thing he said on November 16th. So again, take for it what you will. I get it. And everybody can take their side. And it is what it is. I'm just
everyone
saying,
probably already has a
yeah.
side.
And everybody's going, there's still
bleep. That's pretty good. Well, no, I mean, we asked.
They're still talking about Diggs now, but yeah.
We talk about it because obviously there are questions, because
there was like 4 or 5 questions about it. Those were just the 3 we took. Moving right along. Next question from the Mamba.
Moving right along. Also, LOL.
Yeah. Just segue in the business. The Mamba King 2478. Upcoming free agents to watch for Buffalo. Who would you three want them to sign? Do you have a couple players?
I think the Bills. This would be like the pipe dream potential, but I think the Bills have the funniest thing imaginable on the table if they sign Josh Allen.
They could. That would.
I mean, that would be pretty incredible.
I remember when he was coming out of Kentucky, and it was like, dear God, please no. It was like nobody on this beat wants to have to deal with that.
2 Josh Allens? Come on. There's only room for 1 Josh Allen in Buffalo.
Yeah.
No, there was a safety that I kind of thought of in terms of Cameron Curl, safety out of Washington, underrated guy. He's 24 years old, 7th round pick. So someone who's definitely like a later draft pick. But I think the Bills will, if you talk about wanting to sign guys, I think the Bills will probably look to re-sign Taylor Rapp, I would imagine.
I agree.
Especially with Micah Hyde, his status up in the air, whether he wants to retire or what. But that was just one of the names that I thought of that I was like, I could see that being a nice fit for the Bills. Someone who definitely is instinctual, which I think you've seen be really beneficial in a McDermott defense, and also now Bobby Babbage defense as well.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a sec. A couple wide receivers. I think there are pipe dreams out there of a Calvin Ridley, of a Mike Evans. I'd love it. A Michael Pittman. All those guys, yes. I think would just be phenomenal. If you can work it with the cap. Again, I'm not saying they couldn't. It would just have to be creative in how they go about it.
Finagle.
I think there are a few other under the radar signings for wide receivers because that's all I care about right now, to be completely honest.
Fair.
I think Sean McDermott has shown, and we can get to it in a little bit, the ability to put anybody out on his defense and be productive. That you can take second string, third string guys and still have a top 10 defense. There's a need to improve.
Not D-line, but
for most of the season, yes, but
yeah.
A couple wide receivers. Demarcus Robinson is a wide receiver out of the Rams. He was their number 3 behind Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. He was really solid. Van Jefferson used to be in the Rams. Demarcus Robinson took his spot. He's in Atlanta. Again, more kind of shifty, some speed guys that can get down the field. And then Chris Trapasso, who I caught up with earlier this week, he liked Laviska Shenault. He was a first-round pick by the Jaguars a few years ago. Didn't really catch on. He was in Carolina this past year. Again, those are some guys that you might be thinking cheaper price tags.
Yeah.
Being, I know, like I said, no GM is going to come out and say, like, we're going to spend a ton. But just some of those guys that
we're going to spend a ton.
Like bargain, not necessarily bargain, but more, again, if you're not going to get the top-tier guys because they're going to earn the money that they are.
I mean, realistically, they would be more effective, most likely, than Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield.
Yeah.
So there's that.
And again, you're trying to find, and as we said before on some other podcasts, that like they need to have better than those guys. Like you need to improve that. Now that could also be in the draft.
All right.
This is so cool.
Yes.
These next 2 comments. We've got 2 from Argentina.
Do you think that's Eliza?
Yeah.
Or Elias?
I'm going to put all these in there. So hopefully we'll put in there.
Hi guys. I'm from Argentina and love your show. Amazing. Follow the Bills for years. After that conference championship in 2020, through the years, the offense was losing more and more instead of adding talent. Veteran Emmanuel Sanders, was the best of them all. Bringing back Beasley multiple times, Hardy, Crowder, stagnant with Davis. Why never trade a high pick or a certain investment in that area? Greetings and continued successes. Well, that is very sweet. When I look at this, I think of, though, in 2020, obviously before the trade for Stephon Diggs.
Yep.
And what that meant for this team, having that true number 1 wide receiver. I also think too, I get where there's been some criticism of the fact that they really haven't taken in the draft, when you look at wide receiver specific.
Yeah.
Some of the later guys, obviously Davis being a guy that was later, Khalil Shakir. I do think though, by drafting in the first round last year, Dalton Kincaid, they thought of that immediately as another weapon for Josh Allen. And what I expect this season is to see them go once again into the well of offense of a position player in terms of, or, a guy that is able to catch the ball and be another weapon for Josh Allen this upcoming season.
Yeah. Talk about wanting to trade up for a high pick investment. It takes 2 to make a trade. So part also of it is, again, the DIGGS was a perfect fit at the right time of that. Those trades also don't come around very often. But I will say this, and it was something I talked about with Trapasso. If you want to check that one out, that's also on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel.
Great interview. He is very, very knowledgeable.
Brandon Beane has actually drafted really well at wide receiver.
Yeah, you could say that.
Like Shakir,
Mhm.
Gabe Davis, Isaiah Hodgins.
So Gabe Davis is good.
For a 4th round pick, yeah. I think he'd be a great number 3.
Take the 2 shot.
No, I think he'd be a great number 3 and a consistently great number 3.
Oh, okay.
That's what I've said.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
I've
so you
said
can
it-
turn the mug either way. Dan was right. Dan was wrong.
No.
Dan was right. Dan was wrong. Okay. No?
Spicy today, Jenna. Just the fact of, hey, I was, again, liked Gabe Davis, never liked him as a 2. That's all I've ever said.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Got him. That was an evil laugh.
The 2 worst picks he has as wide receiver were Austin Prohl and Stevenson, Marquez Stevenson. Those are the only 2 guys really haven't
and
panned out.
Stevenson was supposed to be that fast.
Yeah, and he got injured. So and again, I know a bunch of people also. I got DMs about Justin Shorter. We got an email about Justin Shorter of like unleash Shorter. Like maybe we don't know. He was injured and pretty much wasn't active at all this season. So
yeah, like his measurables, you're like, wow, he has the potential, but also there's a lot of on-field stuff that needs to happen for a guy to be successful. That doesn't mean that can't happen, but just because someone is a certain size, a certain weight, a certain muscular build doesn't mean they're going to be, taking the world on fire.
Yeah, and again, this wide receiver class, it's deep. There's a lot of guys in there, so I would love it to be a wide receiver in the 1st round. I don't know if we'll see that, but also too, they did trade up to get Dalton Kincaid, who panned out pretty nicely this year. So like to sit there and say you've never invested, I don't think it's 100% accurate. They incorrectly invested in Gabe, and they have invested in Dalton.
They incorrectly categorized Gabe.
Mm-hmm.
They thought he would be more of a 2, ended up being maybe more of a 3rd option. All right, Tia Gomes saying, shout out to the best crew I know. Big fan all the way from Brazil.
Unbelievable.
That's wild. That's so cool. Is this the do or die season for McDermott? You guys think Bills can manage to wait for how long to at least reach a Super Bowl? I will say it is interesting how things kind of move and progress in the NFL.
Yeah.
Coming into the season, is McDermott going to be on the hot seat?
Yep.
And midway through the season, obviously with the record that the Bills had, being 6-6 at one point, having to fire offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey, I felt like obviously the article put out by Ty Dunn about some of the remarks that McDermott made, it did feel like he was on the hot seat.
Yeah.
That being said, the way the second half part of the season went, the Bills getting to this point, having some continuity and some spark from Joe Brady, I think this year you really saw the commitment the Pagulas have to McDermott. Now, it is a business relationship, and obviously McDermott has been the lead of this team since 2017, and this is a results-based league, but I think there is a ton of good faith and trust between Pagula and McDermott. That being said, you have Josh Allen, you have the window of making it to the Super Bowl, but I think it would take something really, really major for McDermott to be gone.
Yeah. I don't know how I've ended up feeling like a McDermott apologist or somebody that constantly is standing up for him, but like look around the rest of the NFL, and unfortunately the Bills play in the AFC. That's the worst thing that Sean McDermott has done. The fact that the Bills are not in the NFC is completely different, and the fact that there's an apex predator there named Patrick Mahomes that has just been the boogeyman for them. But again, you look at a lot of the other teams, and it was funny because obviously the article that was put out by Ty Dunn, he put out one out again at the end of the year saying that like it's drought brain and all of this stuff. I just respectfully disagree, because what Sean McDermott has done in 6 years, 7 years, Jenna, 6?
2017, 7.
7 years.
17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
Okay. So 7 years, 6 playoff appearances, 4 straight division titles. It's a lot. And I looked at another guy like John Harbaugh. And there's another organization that prides themselves on winning. In the last 7 years since 2017, you're just going back to there, 4 playoff appearances. They've been the number 1 seed twice. They're a 2-4 record in the postseason. Sean McDermott's 5-5. Like, this thought that there's always something better out there, that the grass is always greener, that there's always somebody that's going to come with a magic pen and fix your team, I think is irrational. And instead of looking at hoping for change and changing for the sake of change, think about, why are you making a change? And it's not drought brain to think of, Hey, guess what? We've won 4 straight AFC East division titles. Is that nothing?
Mhm.
I guess I look at some of these things, and one of the last questions is what is it going to take to kind of get over the hump? Or Tolan talks about, why are the Bills always ravaged by injuries year in and year out? Last 2 years, it seems like our defense has been taking a beating. The more I thought about this, Jenna, and I know we're kind of combining 2 questions, sometimes it takes luck.
I agree.
Like the 49ers got lucky against the Lions to go to a Super Bowl.
I think injuries are unfortunately also a huge part of the NFL.
So I guess I'm sitting here going, how long can they manage? Yeah, if they go 6-11 this year, yeah, McDermott's probably fired.
Yeah.
I just don't see them going 6-11 at any point anytime soon.
I also think it's unfair. Like mistakes have happened, of course. There's no doubt about that. But I also think that McDermott has done a good job, for the most part, of continuing to learn and get better at the job. It is a challenging job being the head coach of an NFL franchise that has these tremendous aspirations, especially when you're constantly going up against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I think McDermott has done a good job of, becoming more aggressive, trusting in his players more. That's not to say there haven't been mistakes. Again, 13 seconds. You got bailed out. The fake punt sucked, but you got bailed out. Things like that. But I think I also think it's how his players react to him. And he is still a true motivator of the team, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So I know there are a lot of people that are frustrated, but I agree
and
with
that's
you.
fair.
And yes, I see that.
And that's fair. And if you just hate Sean McDermott and the way that he coaches, like, I don't have any answer for you. Like, I know there's some people.
Here's the thing it means the most to is Kim and Terry Pagula, and they full-heartedly believe in McDermott. So,
and I also understand making a move when you have lost a locker room and being at locker clean out. That team is so far back and behind Sean McDermott.
Okay. Also, can I bring up a point of?
You may.
The Pagulas haven't been the best at hiring head coaches.
No.
So it's just a thought.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't been great.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of bad head coaching hires around the entire NFL.
Correct. Yeah.
So again, I think what Sean McDermott has done, again, I think the next question too is, why should we trust? Yeah.
DMB fan Tony, why should we trust this front office and coaching staff? Is it so funny? Because you have to.
Because you don't get a say. I don't know.
No, I understand. Again, I understand why there is things where you're like, they whiffed on this. They tried to. Like
that's one of the other things too. Like, for all that McDermott gets, and it's all valid, like, Bean has to take some fault for swinging and missing on some draft picks and swinging and missing on some free agents.
Yeah.
Like Trent Sherfield and Deontay Hardy, minus 2 plays in Miami, non-factors.
Kyrie Elam.
Like, that's not on McDermott.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you wasted a first round pick, you traded up and wasted a first round pick on Kyrie Elam. Like, it's so easy to sit there and say, Sean, what are you doing? What is this? And again, trust me, my DMs are filled with them during the games. And it's just one of those things where it's like, again, I think the front office has also done a lot of good.
Yeah.
This isn't it, but just saying, like,
I think what too factors into it is that we hear from McDermott multiple times a week. We hear from Brandon Beane very sparingly throughout the season. Obviously, there's some press conferences mixed in, but for the most part, you're hearing from McDermott all the time. On Monday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, on Friday, on game day. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And that is a hard job to do. And I think that McDermott does do a good job.
Yeah. Sprawl 6466. Should we be concerned about Babich as the new DC, considering he was promoted from within? I would feel a lot more confident if the DC was hired from the outside so that we could get a fresh set of eyes on this defense. Jenna, you go first.
I love Bobby Babich. I love the energy and the juice that he has brought to this defense. I understand when someone would say, hey, why didn't you go out and do outside interviews and get fresh set of eyes? I think Bobby Babich has been, we talk about for the draft, develop, resign. Bobby Babich was absolutely going to get a defensive coordinator job outside the Bills if Buffalo did not promote him. I think it's the perfect opportunity. Someone who has been successful as a secondary coach, someone who has been very successful as a linebackers coach. You're bringing in a guy that has meant so much to your team. His dad coached for the Bills. Like, they didn't want to lose the asset that was Bobby Babbage.
Yeah.
And I think, will there be the opportunity for Babbage to come together with McDermott and to figure out this defense? We at this point don't know who will be calling the plays, but I think there is a tremendous opportunity because the improvement you've seen from guys under Babbage and just the development and that piece. And obviously he's someone that, is cohesively works with Sean McDermott.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me.
It's everybody loves continuity until they don't love continuity. And I think there will be enough change. I think there'll be enough change. You'll have a new D-line coach coming. There's new promotions.
Yes.
That I think that you'll get fresh insight at each spot because Babbage has coached the corners. He has coached defensive backs, safeties, and then linebackers. He's done it all.
I think this defense did a hell of a job with the fact of the injuries that they sustained. So obviously the coaching and the development of the guys who were thrusted into starting positions shows that this defensive staff has the ability to coach.
I agree. 100%. Again, I know I've just, more often than not, I'm usually the abrasive one. And I'm usually like, here's my hot take. We got to go out and do this and this and this. I'm
glad you're admitting that.
Yeah. I'm really comfortable with team running back this year.
I agree because I think that they did it with not just like, well, this is how it was, so we're just going to keep doing it.
My thing is if the Chiefs played the Ravens 10 times, I think the Chiefs win that game, the AFC Championship game, 8 times. I don't think the Ravens were equipped. I thought their game plan was
win 9 or 10.
And I think if the Bills played the Chiefs again, I think they split 5-5.
I agree.
Like, that is how close I think that game was.
I agree.
So instead of, and again, I know you hate the phrase, didn't get run out of the gym. I know, and it's I talked about how it's Groundhog's Day and all of these things. I still feel like they play that game again. Bass kicks a field goal and you have a shot. I'm not saying you win it, but you got a puncher's chance in it.
Yeah. A punter's chance?
Punchers.
No, I know, but it would have been.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. I always get the wild. Yeah. Hey guys, show is amazing. Thank you. Which of the unrestricted free agents do you fight to keep this offseason? I know he's getting up there, but I think it must keep his Hyde and Poyer together for one more year. I love Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer and what they have meant to this team. I mean, that is undisputed. Came in, helped build the culture, helped be the guys, the leaders that really brought the success to this franchise, the safety blanket that was on the defense. I don't know if Micah Hyde wants to be back, and I think that's okay. And I don't know if he does want to come back.
Yeah.
If the Bills, I think if I were Micah Hyde, I would say, look, it depends on money, all these things, but I don't think he should be your starting safety in 2024. I think he is phenomenal. He is a leader. He is all these things, but I think at that position, you need a bit more speed. He has the instincts. He has all these things, but I think for him, he's battled some injuries, obviously the neck.
Yep.
And I don't know if fans want to hear that. I just think realistically, that is a piece of this business that is what makes it a business, is having to make, more of the decision, not based on your heart, but more so of, okay, who could be the best out there?
That's harsh.
I really don't want it to be harsh. I just think it's the reality of the business.
Do you want him back as a backup?
I would love that. Yeah. I mean, I like Micah Hyde. You talk about another guy who, when he talks, we all listen because he means that much to the team. I'm not like a Micah Hyde hater at all.
Yeah.
I think he's phenomenal. I just think for this team, like you talk about continuity and sometimes it not being as well intended as it starts out to be. I think there's the opportunity for that. I mean, what do you think?
If they can get him back on a 1-year deal, reasonably priced, like let's run it back one more time. It's Poyer's last year under contract. Like, if they go out together, I think that also brings you freedom, because I'm terrified of them taking a safety in the first round. So, like, if you have them coming back and you have Hamlin, and maybe you get Rapp on a cheap deal too, or maybe you sign Rapp now to a 3-year deal and you can spread his money out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, look, and then we can take a guy in the 5th round or the 4th round, and hey, you're not going to play much this year, but be a Terrell Bernard. you're our replacement for these guys.
Yeah. Get your head in the game. Yeah.
I think, again, I'm team run it back. So if you can get Hyde to come back at a reasonable price, I'm all for it. And running Hyde and Poyer back one more time, like they're saying. He's not my highest priority. I think Daquan Jones is probably my highest priority.
That's fair.
I think it's Daquan, and then it's Epinesa are my three guys. I'm totally fine with all three of those guys coming back.
I love Ty Johnson also.
And I was so not a fan of AJ Epinesa at training camp. And I was so wrong. That guy, I was like, there's nothing there. Boogie's outplayed him. And AJ was phenomenal this year, is worth keeping around. But again, if I think that if you can get last dance for Hyde and Poyer.
I mean, that would be incredible. I don't know if Hyde would want to be back. I also don't know if he would want to be back in a backup role. That's totally understandable as well.
If Hyde's coming back, he ain't backing up.
I get that. He had neck injuries. He's a father. I feel like he is really contemplating like what he
100%.
wants to do.
Oh, he's not going to be a coach.
When
he's done with football,
I do not blame anyone for not being a coach. That is a
awful,
thankless, almost job.
Then we're going to be on here talking about how Hyde ran the wrong concepts on the defense.
Yeah.
Costa Karakosis.
I'm sorry. I got nothing. I was going to help you, but I don't.
You're just like, I get all the hard ones. Most Bills fans seem to want Bean to go out in the first round. And trust me, I'm definitely one of them. But if we do go wide receiver in the first round, how do we address another potential gap in our rosters? Safety is the position we specifically comes to mind. Is there talent in the later rounds, or do we have to make some moves in free agency? Kind of address that with the Hyde thing.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Passo said he was just starting to dive into the safeties. Mike and I will be at the combine later at the end of this month, so we'll get to talk to some of them. But again, this may be Bean talked about drafting players and looking 2-3 years down the road. Like the Bills,
which is ideal. That's like
the
what
Bills
you
have
want
one
to do,
defensive lineman under contract. They have Ed Oliver under contract next year. That's it.
Underpaid.
So yeah, they need a wide receiver because, as I've said before, he's your $250 million investment, and you need to give him all the tools possible. I'm also excited for the possibility of what Joe Brady can do with another wide receiver and another weapon. I'm very excited. People are thinking like, oh, like we've seen what this Joe Brady offense can do. I think he learned a lot from his failures in Carolina. I think he learned a lot being here and sitting back behind Ken Dorsey. And then all of a sudden you got to get what, you're getting a whole off season of his flair.
Pieces of flair.
Love
it. I kind of do have to go.
Yeah. So we'll just one last one. Address some of these literally cost players. Growth mindset, restructuring. Thoughts on restructuring Josh, Dion, Steph, any chance reworking Vaughn or Dawson Knox or Trey? How much cap room do these guys have with the Bills face? This was from Growth Mindset.
That's funny. 2039.
Yeah.
I think you try to restructure as many deals as you can.
Yeah, I think you restructure for sure Josh. I think you restructure Dion.
Yeah.
I don't think you restructure Steph.
Interesting.
Because I think you want the ability to possibly move on at the end of the year.
That's fair.
If you restructure, salary cap isn't real. Not real. But you do kick the can down the road. So that means you're keeping Steph, who's 32 next year. Something like that.
30 plus, obviously. So
again, for all that Steph didn't do and for how quiet he was at the end of the season, just remember that he had 1,000 yards and 100 catches.
Yeah. I mean, when you take a step back and you look at the numbers, you're just like, oh, dang. Yeah. It's just in the moment. Sometimes you look back and you're like, oh.
One last thing too, to have an alpha like Steph, I think is huge because we talked about momentum.
A dog.
We talked about like momentum and confidence. We did that whole thing with the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to the Green Light Pod and they were talking about it with Chris Long. And he's like, they tightened up. Like Josh Reynolds tightened up and dropped those passes. And all I could think of myself was that if the Bills ever needed a third down, they could go to Diggs. And Diggs wants the ball. And like that's a guy that you want to have.
He believes that he can catch it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
I get it.
We'll see.
Look at that. We framed the podcast. Started with Stephon Diggs, ended talking about Stephon Diggs. All right. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We always appreciate it. For Dan Fates, I'm Jenna Cottrell, Mike Catalana. Just a Veterans Day off. Wow, that was dramatic. All right. Thank you for watching. We always appreciate it. We'll catch you next time here on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Corny.
Buffalo Plus, your interactive look at the week in football, brought to you by Connors and Ferris.